You may know that one of the segments that we like to have is building old kits. Some of us remember them like they were yesterday and enjoy seeing them built. Well, Martin has built some for us before, and he has another one for this evening. So Martin, welcome.
Evening, Jim. Let's see how this works. See if I know what I'm doing or not here. Come on. Hey, that looks like it worked.
Yes, sir.
Frightening. So this is the third time I've done this. And I had two choices, and I'm not sure if I made the right one or not. They both had their curious challenges and difficulties. That's what's to be expected with some old kits. Some are better than others. So this is a pretty straightforward one, though, and I'm pretty sure Jim's actually familiar with it. He may have actually even built one. We've got an old All Nation IT traction 41-foot 5-inch box trailer.
Absolutely.
It's a Zimmer. That's actually made by Zimmer, and All Nation sold them. And you can see this says it's got a railroad roof with flat ends, outside hung doors. So I can tell you right now, you have all kinds of variations or possible. There were round ends, there were inside hung doors, and they mixed them all up. You could get this kit in various incarnations and versions. This is kit number A150. And you see the box has had a few mishaps, but it's fairly solid. And on the surface, everything did seem to be there. And so we've got a nice milled floor. So we don't have to build a floor, which is nice. We have a railroad roof, which has some scribbling on. So somebody had already started and played with it a little bit. And there's a pair of curved ends. Oh, wait a minute. The box said flat ends. So we're already off to a flying divergence in reality. The box says one thing, the kit's got different parts. Okay, so what? We built it anyhow. Somebody's scribed some nice curves on the roof, so you know where those ends go. And I don't know if this has worked. There's a little bit of a milled edge here, so those end blocks actually fit up tight against that edge. So this is going to go together fairly well. One hopes. Here's the siding. It's plywood. It's fairly thick too. We're talking like, I don't know, it's more than 1/8 of an inch. It's quite a bit more actually. And it's scribed on one side. And you have the plans. Your plans show A160 and A150. It's definitely not A160 because I think that's actually an inside door reefer or ice car. So you've got instructions for two different kits in the same set of instructions and drawings. That makes things interesting. Obviously enough, we have scribe siding. Yes, those are the ends and the doors. Never would have figured that out without reading what's written on them. This one's broken. That's okay. That's what glue is for. But yeah, these ends, they have to get wrapped around those curved end blocks. So you got to be a little careful with this stuff. It's not 1/32 thick. It's not 1/16. It's somewhere in between. It's whatever was custom built or manufactured for Zimmer in these kits. It's a little fragile, but it'll bend. What else we got? Well, we got bolsters, big Zamek cast bolsters. So you got to drill those out and tap them right now before you do anything, because doing it later is, after you put them on the car, is no fun. We have roof filler and floor filler. We'll actually make use of that. We got 4 door runners. We got some tin plated steel. I'm not even sure what this piece was for. We're going to use this piece for sure. Got some quarter round. We got a piece of angle, which is actually broken, which is unfortunate, but we're going to need that. some wire, which is really hard to use because it's got to be straightened out. But I think they gave you curved wire because that's what they had and it would fit in the box. But it does make it a little bit of a challenge when you have to straighten out. That's not 33 thousandths. It's actually heavier. It's closer to 38 thousandths, almost 40 thousandths brass wire. So it's fairly stiff stuff. Okay, there's your instructions, step by step. Well, sort of. It's fit, glue, and shape. Okay, whatever that means. You sort of have to interpret your instructions a little bit, and they cover multiple kits. So there's kit 155, 160, and you're building 150. So you got to be kind of discreet on what you're skipping over, leaving out, or actually attending to. And you have to think a little bit. Yeah, I think I probably do need to do that step. You'll find out later if you didn't. But it's your kit, it's your car. If you make changes, that's up to you. There's nothing inscribed in stone that says you must do it exactly as written. So we've got diagrams for the A150 and the A155. The A160 is over the other side of the page, so we're going to build the A150, and that shows rounded ends. Okay, so what? And there's the railroad roof. It's a cluster area roof. It's not the standard width and dimensions of a cluster area roof. It's a little bit wider on the top section, but the roof overall is actually about a scale foot narrower, because traction cars were about a foot narrower than regular freight cars. So you just can't substitute something off your bench top into one of these kits, because it's not going to be the right width. Like Northeastern scale lumber roofing just isn't going to work unless you run it through your table saw, take 1/4 of an inch out of it on each pass and glue it back together. And yes, I have done that. And yep, we're going to build 150. Okay, that's not too painful. Okay, the dreaded shaping the roof ends step. This is what everybody is terrified of when it comes to a cluster area roof. It's already marked, and I've taken it and actually cut this was square a couple of slides back, but I just flipped it over and followed that line, running it through my bandsaw. I don't get it, it doesn't have to be that fancy. It's a little tricky because, of course, this roof surface is not flat. It's got a little curvature to it. It's a crown to it. So you have to hold it fairly steady in your hands as you run it through a bandsaw, but it's quite doable. And if you've got a 3/8 inch blade on your bandsaw, it'll take it right through. Unfortunately, unlike some kits, this is not poplar. It's just plain basswood, so it cuts pretty easily. There's where those floor fill pieces go. They fill out the ends. Now you have a solid end on your milled flooring. And one of my favorite tools, the 4-in-hand. I use this thing for all kinds of things, but I find it really useful for shaping roofing ends, or at least on the intermediate step of that activity. The 4-in-hand is too slow. I am not patient enough to do an entire roof end with that. So I've got a 4-inch upright belt sander. It's got a 100 grit belt on it, which means it'll take that roof down to nothing in seconds. So you just kind of sneak up on it. You creep up on it. You know where you're going to go. You just kind of touch it to it, wrap it through it a few times, get close. Okay, close enough. Don't go any further because you're going to make an irreplaceable damage point. Achievement, which you don't want to do. Then it's back to the 4-in-hand and sanding blocks and sandpaper of various grits. But it's, you don't need to be necessarily terrified of large power tools when it comes to building a kit. I confess this is O scale, so maybe I have a slight advantage over an HO kit, but okay, if it's HO, go to 200 grit and be equally gentle. So all that shaping just removes the overhang from the upper cluster roof. That's where that roof filler piece goes, which you have to put in there, glue it in place, carve it in, sand it down, and you snip it in, carve, sand, 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 carve, sand. Maybe put a little filler on it, sand it some more until it gets to somewhere where you say, I'll stop here for now because I need to know where this is going to fit with the end blocks. Because you really don't know how far you really want to go unless you have a reference point. That would be the actual overhang of the end blocks, because you're going to put that siding over those end blocks. So you need to know exactly where you're going. It's kind of hard to tell that until you get it assembled. And then you take the finishing stages with the sanding blocks. So just put the box together. It's not too hard. And actually I glued the end blocks to the roof first because it has this little ledge to align everything perfectly. So it's built in. This is your alignment point right here on the roof. And that puts the two end blocks in place. And once you have those in place, you just glue it to the floor. And I like to put an extra set of reinforcing blocks on these because that's end grain, and end grain to regular grain is not very strong. So every now and then I'm going to drop a car on the floor in my shop, and it's a concrete floor. And I prefer to have them bounce as opposed to disassemble. And if I put the end blocks in, they don't disassemble. So that adds a lot of strength. And I'm going to stop right there because that was the most horrific part of the build and the most challenging part. And if anybody has questions about it. So next week, we're going to put the ends and sides and underbody and other good stuff onto this car and see how much trouble we can get into. So if there's any questions, throw them at me now.
Was that a pretty popular kit back in the day or not, Martin?
I think it was actually. It seemed, well, and they made about 8 different freight car trailers and flat cars, and there was nothing else like them. You couldn't get them anywhere else.
Yeah.
The only other source of a freight trailer, well, you get brass ones, but and there weren't too many of those either. But I think it was CarWorks actually imported the reefer car as a resin casting. And there's some other kits. I think it's Midwest Hobbies. They sold some basically assembled ones that you had to finish out with all the detail parts. So you would get the shell and you'd have to add all the details.
Yeah.
Those were very, very nice. They were not cheap, still aren't cheap if you can find them. But all this stuff is out of production now, 30 years plus. So they haven't actually sold traction freight trailers in a very long time. And the new All Nation is now selling flat cars and gondolas. And I think parts for this kit, like the floor.
Yeah.
But not the roof yet, at least. Who
We can
knows?
always hope.
Well, the roof is, that's tough. That's a tough part of it. Let's see. I assume I'm not sharing anymore.
No.
That's okay. And do we have any questions from anybody else?
Yes, I do, Martin.
Who,
Were
oh,
they
there
the
you are.
first? Yes, Pat here. Were they the first kit builders in, or did they just, were they there before LaBelle?
Well, that's a good, well, okay, LaBelle never released these in O-scale.
Yeah.
So this was the only O-scale option you had. I actually asked Rick Steele LaBelle years ago to take his HO kits and scale them up to O-scale. He's got no competition out there. This is the traction community would, these, built ones sell fairly well on eBay. So, and the kits actually used to sell were pretty dear on occasion when you could find them.
Yeah, I
So,
do have some to build right now. I haven't gotten to them yet.
What, the HO or O?
Oh, There's
Yep.
nothing else. Oh,
Very good. Yeah, well, they're not hard. And there are some tricks to the underbody and details. You can take that about as far as you want.
the imagination.
I tend to limit that because I'm not going to tie it into the radial couplers. That's a complication that I don't want to get into with running air hose lines that actually swivel. So I've seen cars with them installed with them, but good for you. I mean, I'm not going that far.
Thanks, Martin.
Yep, no problem.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, did that kit come with a template for the curvature of the end of the roof? I seem to remember the old Walthers kits gave you a piece of cardboard with the curve on it.
Nope. Well, if there was one, it wasn't in a box. I don't remember All Nation ever and Zimmer ever putting those in. You got a picture and you held it up against the picture and said, yeah, that's close. And I'm going to put a canvas tar paper roof over it anyhow. So at the end of the day, most of that's going to go away. But LaBelle does sell template pieces for their roofs.
That's
So,
nice to know.
well, but that's great if you're building the HO versions. And I have built one. I actually have built one HO LaBelle freight trailer. Years ago, I built the CERA freight trailer and the standard freight trailer, which comes in, is it 16 or 32 different variations? It's very standard. Yeah, that comes with flat. What was it? It's flat ends, rounded ends, doors on the ends, or no doors on the ends. So there's 4 different ends. Then there's doors on the side. It's inner, outer, door and a half, inner, outer. So mix and match it. I think that's 16 or 32. I've forgotten which it is. But I built one once, and I actually had 3 different sets of plans, and I actually had prototype plans, and I had a set of plans that were in 17/64 as well. And what I found out is every single set of plans I had was different.
Yeah.
For the standard car, that came in 32 variations, there were no standard plans either. So it was a bit of an adventure. So that's why I said, there reaches a point where you say, that looks good. That looks right. That's a good place to stop right there.